We're not gonna get like,
All right. I'm going to interrupt everybody at this point so we can get started. Thanks for understanding. Mr. Kuklik and I met yesterday, and we've got some plans for you for this week, next week, the following week, and we've got a lot to do to kind of get rolling with all this, and I've got a lot to tell you. I have 2 weeks worth of Cornell notes to pass back to you, and some of you need to take a look at them because last week, the week before last got a lot better, and then last week, some of you got a little worse again. So I want to pass these back and let you look at them and get some feedback on them. In the meantime, you can see today's agenda, so that might give you some things that you want to add to your notes. The problem that some of you had last week was simply not including everything. There's a lot of times when I'm making announcements and I'm telling you things, or Mr. Kuklik is jumping in and giving you a tip about something, and I know you hear us, and maybe I'm thinking like in your head, you're probably like, oh, I don't need to write that down, I'll remember that. I want you to write it down, okay? So if you lost any points, it's because you didn't write enough, and I gave you some examples on there of things you maybe could have written but didn't. If you're looking at it going, well, what else would I have written about? I gave you some ideas. Question?
Is it possible you can find Cornell notes with lines on it, because this doesn't really work for me. My OCD hates this.
I'll see what I can do. That's a valid. Would you do me a favor, Andre, and write that in your questions thing so that I remember to look for that? Great. What was your question, Carson? Yes, exactly. Can you, here, let me do this actually. Hold on, let me show you an example. So you did a really good job.
What was a mosquito bite?
All these people did a really good job. Let me show you evidence. Sorry. Actually, I'm going to show you why it's because he's not here and he can actually hold his phone. So what he's done is he's put his notes here, which we go over.
I thought you were about to say you should race.
So he points, it's like, give it like, see how he's labeling them? Like conflict and compromise. Right.
So if your skin is
Mind
like,
maps, and then he writes
wrinkly enough, it's like you know,
and so it's like they're giving labels, homework. Okay, what about right theme? What about materials? What about it? So you're giving some labels on this side. If you do have questions, you can also put those here as well. And then at the end of class, you've got your notes, you kind of label what they're about, and you've got the summary. Makes sense? Yes. Hold on to his while you work on something.
I'm just saying.
All right, I know I have another one for you. These are kind of a mess, guys, so hold on, let me just try to find who I owe what to. All right.
I can't wait to ride down.
I don't even know which week, sorry, that's Jordan's, pass it to Jordan, and this is Hallie's, and this is Virginia's, and that's Blythe. Thank you. And here is an Ebony, and here's a Sophie. Pass that to Sophie. All right, and then here's a Margaret, and another Virginia. And you're welcome. And Sophie. Hey, Elijah. And Elijah's finally joining us. Welcome. What's keeping you after school?
Well, for the morning you showed the producer decided not to write the script, and they want me to write.
Thomas Henderson.
Who's the producer?
You have Elijah's other one? Oh, you get it, okay, great. All right, this one is yours as well, that one is yours.
Do you like writing script?
I'm gonna give you mine.
No, I wrote it
Yeah,
on
that's kind of
Tuesday.
difficult.
I tried to produce it, but I couldn't.
Okay, so under assessment, you see Cornell Notes feedback continued. So take a look at your Cornell Notes. I gave you some feedback. For the most part, a lot of you are on the right track as far as the formatting. The one difficulty a few of you ran into last week was just simply not including enough information. So that's kind of my tip for that. If you have individual questions, I'll entertain those after class. But for now, I kind of want to move on with our agenda because we have a lot on it. Just to give you a brief update about what's coming, our Thomas Cooper date has been solidified. We will be going to Thomas Cooper Library on Monday, October 16th, okay? There is a poll in your Google Classroom that asks you about transportation. And I put a little note on it to let me explain it in class before you answer it. But basically what the poll is going to ask you is, if it were up to you, and I'm not promising it is, but if it were up to you, how would you prefer to get to Thomas Cooper? You want to catch a ride with me or Mr. Kuklik? You want your parent to drop you off? You want to drive yourself? You want to ride with your friend? I don't care what the answer is, I just want you to tell me what the answer is, And most importantly, guys, the reason I wanted you to wait to answer that question, please don't go in there and say, I want to drive myself. And then a week before the trip, you come to me and say, hey, my mom says I'm not allowed to drive myself. That doesn't do me any good. Make sure you know the answer to the question before you tell me the answer to the question. If you say, I want to ride with my friend Termandre who's going to drive, don't come to me the week before and say, actually, I'm not allowed to ride with student drivers. You know, like that doesn't do me any good. Or you come to me the week before and you say, actually, Termandre is not allowed to have other students in his car. Again, helpful to no one. So find out all of your own personal situations and then answer the question because that'll help me make a plan. Yes?
What is Thomas Cooper? What's that?
Thomas Cooper is the library at the University of South Carolina. Didn't understand.
I mean, like, I didn't know we were going there.
Oh, yeah, we saw that last week.
We did?
Yep. It's cool. I was gonna say, I think you wrote it down actually, but no,
Yeah,
that's
I
all
did
right.
write it down.
So, Thomas Cooper Library, let me slow down for a second. It's the library at the University of South Carolina. We go there for a day each year when we do this research project for a number of reasons.
Stefan Hendricks, please report to the front of the school. Stefan Hendricks, please report to the front of the school.
One reason we go there is because they have better and more resources. So it's gonna give y'all a leg up on your research projects. You're gonna find a lot more books on your topic, a lot more online articles on your topic. University of South Carolina is of course a big public university, so they have a lot more money to spend on resources than like say a Westwood High School. So while you are certainly encouraged to use our library for some of your research, it will not be enough. You're gonna need additional resources, and that's one reason why I take you to Thomas Cooper. Another really, really equally important reason though is just so you get accustomed to using a university library, finding books in the stacks, logging on to those databases and figuring out how to navigate them. This is all, whether you go to USC or not, this is all gonna help you get prepared for what you can expect to find when you get to college. Yes, sir. Okay, hold that thought. You're in a different place, but we're gonna do a big research project. I'll get there. Yes?
How long will this be? I mean, like, we're gonna be there all day, like, for the rest of the school?
Yeah.
Do you have any field trip?
Not yet. I need to figure out the transportation thing first, and then next week I'll have field trip forms for you. But it is October 16th. So, next week you'll get the forms, but right now I need you to figure out what needs to happen with transportation, okay? What was I gonna say next? I need to tell you something, I can't remember what it is. All right, materials check. I did put something in Google Classroom today. I do not expect you to have done that in between your 7th period and this class. But just so you know, I finally did put the 4 labels I want you to use for dividers. You might have more than 4 dividers, that's great. You can share with your friends, you can save them for later. But you need 4 sections. And I need to check those of you whose binders I have not checked. So, not to call you out, but I do kind of need to call you out. I need to check Cameron's, which I see, excellent. You're fine, okay. Kalia's not here. Ebony. Thank you, ma'am, you're great. Hallie. And everyone else's I've seen, but I want you to continue to bring them each week. I will tell you now, hint, hint, there may be a surprise binder check at some point where I want to see that you have it in class, and I want to see that it's labeled, and I want to see that you put your notes in it. So keep up with that, because you might get an easy A, or unfortunately a very easy F. Okay, so bring your binder every week with dividers. Again, Carson, don't freak out, I'll catch you up. Okay, you need a binder. There you go, now you're caught up. In Google Classroom, there's 4 categories. You can read them for yourselves, but I want to explain really quickly what each one is, so you know what goes in each section of your binder. Could you scroll down for me, Mr. K? Keep scrolling, I gotta figure out, oh wait, it's done. Okay, I did not put it in the agenda, never mind, let's go back up. So, I'll go off the top of my head. The 4 sections are, number 1, class meetings was one of the labels. What would you imagine might go there?
Anything that we do in class.
Yeah, the Cornell notes, right, stuff from class. The second section, and again, this is in Google Classroom, so I know you can't see this in front of you, but just trust me. So class meetings are where your Cornell notes will go. The second section is miscellaneous handouts. I don't know if we'll have any, but if we do, that's where you would put it. So if I give you a handout and say, here's a handout about how to find primary sources, you could stick that in that section of your binder. The third section is source sheets. You don't have any source sheets yet. You don't know what those are yet because we didn't use them last year, but you will, okay? And the fourth and last section, I forget how I have phrased it, but it's essentially texts, articles. When we go to Thomas Cooper, I'm going to encourage you to print some of these articles that you're going to find. And I want you to read through them, and you're going to highlight them and mark on them and write in them, and that's where they're going to go in your binder. And if you choose not to print them, I've got some other ideas, so just kind of keep that in mind. So any questions about materials or Cornell notes, anything like that? One of the things that was missing from a lot of people's Cornell notes from last week was the fact that we completely changed the procedures for making up a missed class. So I wanted to review it again, because I want to make sure everybody hears me say this. If you need to miss class, okay, I need notice about that, preferably in writing and preferably before class. Like, hey, I can't be there Wednesday, I have a cross-country meet, or something. I may or may not need a note, depending on what that is. Like, Ebony brought me a note from the dentist the other day. Hallie has sent me her cross-country, schedule. Okay, so provide me whatever kind of evidence you think would help me know where you were, okay? And then we're recording. And so we're gonna go back to that, where I'm recording everything that we say and do in class. I will post that on YouTube tonight and also link it in Google Classroom. If you ever miss class on a Wednesday, you can go in, you can watch that video of class, and you can do your Cornell notes. You'll have to print yourself a template, but I've got it there for you to print. And then you would have to turn that into me by Friday of that same week. I also updated our syllabus to say all that. The Friday of the same week. Any questions about that? Yes, sir.
What's your YouTube channel?
Right now my YouTube channel is just under my name, but since Coach K and I are kind of tag teaming this, we're probably gonna change it. Did I call you Coach K? I did.
You did.
That was weird and awkward, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But you are a coach now.
Yeah.
What do you coach?
Girls soccer.
Oh, wait, really? Here?
Really?
Oh, you
Indeed.
do?
Yeah.
What?
And do you-
Last coach?
Joe, JV coach.
Oh. There's finally a varsity and
I thought you
JV.
meant-
Fingers crossed. Nothing, not official yet. Fingers
But we're hoping. You know who Coach K is? She's the girl that had my job before I had my job, and all the kids called her Coach K.
crossed.
So I keep trying to say Mr. K, and I keep saying
So you're
Coach.
calling me a girl.
Yeah, that's a little bit right, so weird and awkward.
It's a compliment.
In any case, the answer to the question is Mr. K and I will probably create a different YouTube channel at this point to host these things, but I'm gonna put the link in the Google Classroom, so you'll always be able to find it pretty easily.
What if you're running out of space on this? Can I just turn it?
Absolutely. And then if you have to turn it over, don't even worry about the boxes, you just turn it over and keep going how you need to keep going,
Okay.
okay? All right, good, so, we're already behind. I knew we would be. All right, let's talk about the theme and let's get to what we're actually gonna work on today, because you are gonna need Mr. K and I to help you with something before you leave class today, and I wanna make sure we have time enough to do it. If you would, take out whatever device you have with you. You can look on with a neighbor if you don't have one. Go to our Google Classroom. There's an announcement that I posted today that said we're going to use this in class. Go to that one, because we're getting ready to use it in class. And, can you pull up the classroom? I am gonna be.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
still gonna make you do something. But that was where it turns out.
I guess so we can sit down and do what we're gonna plan on
Yeah,
doing.
I'd love to. I mean, that thing is.
Yeah, so fun.
Now, Joyce.
Oh, yeah. This one, it says we're going to use.
Thanks. All right, here's where I want you. So you've got that announcement in Google Classroom that said we are going to use this in class, and then there's two things there. There's a theme book, and there's a link to a YouTube video. I had hoped to have time for the YouTube video, but I'm not thinking we will. I'll talk about that momentarily. Pull up the theme book, and I want you to scroll down to page 7.
Sorry.
Oh, I need to keep you in. I don't even know.
To the classroom page.
Yeah, can you invite Carson really quickly?
Carson, the code is B. let me write it.
BMM one.
Code, yeah,
Yeah. BMM one SHN.
SHN, there we go.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, so pages 7, 8, and 9 are where they sort of try to summarize the theme for you. I don't want to read this to you, but I also don't want this to take too long, but I want to, basically what's happening is I want to require you to do this now in class with me, because I'm worried if I assign it for homework, some of you will skim over it, neglect it, and I want to give you time to do it because y'all are busy people. Take 5 minutes with the person sitting next to you, or on your own if you prefer, or whatever. I want you to read this. I want you to read pages 7, 8, and 9. And it's not a tough read. You can read it pretty quickly. I want you to read it, and you are going to decide, because I'm getting ready to ask you to respond to this, of everything that you read on these pages, what is the one most important thing? I want you to figure that out. So I'm going to stop talking for like 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to let you read, okay? And then we'll come back together as a class. Go ahead, what's up? Read pages 7, 8, and 9. Yeah. And it really is mostly 7 and 8.
I just thought it would be a good idea for a theme. Maybe I'll do a research paper with you guys,
Ooh, I
just
like
for
it.
funsies.
You know,
This is not very good.
that's how good you guys are gonna be at this. You can
You
just
think
knock
we
it out
can
just for
play?
fun.
That's really fun.
No, actually, I've thought about doing that every single year. And
Yeah.
I've never managed to make it happen. But I wanted to do it because I wanted to model the entire process for them and not just a sample paper. It's like, here's my notes, here's my notes, here's my iterated note,
Yeah.
here's where I highlighted.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to, but it sounds fun.
It sounds.
All right, sorry, we will stop interrupting you so you can finish reading because we have other things we have to do today.
Awesome. That's fine. I'll go to Carolina.
Yeah, I'm
I
not.
don't know why I can't do that when I say the word, but that's the kind of
There's
nice.
some of the current ones, there's some places we could go to the archives.
I remember it, but I don't know.
School.
Yeah.
And
Well, I was-
unfortunately, they need So maybe.
Yes,
So I feel like I saw your name.
yes.
See some people still reading, I see a few people starting to finish. Take 1 or 2 more minutes to kind of read through and choose what you think you might, what stood out to you. All right, in the interest of time, I'm gonna start talking. I realize some of you are finishing questions.
I have a question. So, like, what if you are thinking about doing the group, but you don't know if you want to do a paper or what? Like, I did the rule book thing.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do a group or a paper, so I just did the paper.
And that's okay for that assignment, which I know I still owe y'all grades on it. I hope to get to that today and I didn't. But, you've essentially, you're looking at about 2 weeks or so to figure that out.
Okay,
You've got about 2 more weeks or so to figure out
okay.
what research category you're gonna do, whether you'll do a group or an individual, and then I'm gonna start locking y'all into things. Carson, you're a sophomore, so you're definitely gonna do a paper. But we'll talk more about that. All right, let's talk. Blythe, can I pick on you? What in that article stood out to you as important or surprising or a good question?
I don't know.
All right, Sophie's gonna save you. Go ahead, Sophie.
Okay, one of the things that it mentioned that I hadn't quite thought of in my process was that conflict leads to compromise, but then the compromise can also then lead to more conflict.
I love it, and I'm gonna repeat it loudly so that Columbia can have the benefit when she watches the video. Yeah, this idea that conflict can lead to compromise, but also compromise can then fall apart and lead to conflict. I agree with you. Actually, that second question, what happens when a compromise lasts only a short time? And then they give you these examples. I had not really considered that either. Like, what happens when the compromise that you've come up with actually just causes more conflict? Armandre, you had your hand up. What were you gonna say?
Exactly what I said.
Okay, good, you're right. Anybody else? What do you think? What did you read about that surprised you? What did you see that you're like, oh, I didn't think about that before?
Reading what happens on the negative side when compromise is talking about how the farmers would go and how Washington is going to be able to do that.
So what happens when neither side will compromise? That's a great question. I wonder that just on a daily basis. I mean, sometimes I see two people in a heated argument, and I think to myself, like, how are you ever gonna end the argument? Like, neither side is really willing to give.
So what's gonna happen?
One of the sides is going down.
In this same post, there was that YouTube video. That YouTube video is a little over an hour, and it is the webinar that National History Day hosted about the theme. I've posted it there just for your reference. I would strongly encourage you to watch that webinar. I know it's long. You could have it play in the background, maybe while you're working on like some of your History Day homework. And I'll tell you, if you can't give it the whole hour, don't. Just watch the first 20 minutes. Because the first 20 minutes of the webinar, they talk about some of this that you read, and they answer some really important questions, one of which I'll summarize for you quickly now. The question they start the webinar with is, in your project, do you have to talk about both conflict and compromise? And the answer may surprise you. The answer is, only if both of those things relate to your topic. So if your topic is about a conflict where there was no compromise, and both parties are refusing to compromise, and maybe that's part of what started the conflict, your paper is mostly about conflict, but you're still going to give the context of there was no compromise, which led to the conflict. Does that make sense? So you are going to talk about both if they're relevant, but if your paper seems heavier on the conflict side or heavier on the compromise side, that's okay. For example, maybe you're actually doing the Missouri Compromise as your topic. Well, if the Missouri Compromise is your topic, most of your research is about the compromise. However, if you talked about the Missouri Compromise and you failed to mention any of the conflict that either resulted in the compromise or stemmed from the compromise, then you haven't really treated your topic with enough attention. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that make sense to everyone besides Hermione?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because he was like the only one making eye contact, it was kind of freaking me out a little bit. All right. So, don't neglect this, guys. I really, really feel like there is so much information in this theme book. I only had you read like 2.5 pages about the theme, but it is rich with questions. It's, yeah. And so I've highlighted a few things for you. So, the most important pages are pages 7 through 9, the ones you just read. Other pages that are super important to look at are pages 11, 12, and 13.
11, 12, 13.
And what do you see here?
Sample topics.
Sample topics. Really, really good ones. Lots of them.
Ooh,
Yep, see, Kuklik likes it.
tell me more.
He actually knows what the things on this list are, imagine that. I don't.
Get paid to.
So I really want you guys to use this, and can you actually, for a second, scroll back up to the other part, and then I'll let you look at your sample topics. Hold on, I want to point something out to them.
9.
This'll do right here. So just for example, guys, think about this for a second. Consider the actions of British Prime Minister Chamberlain. Did the compromise he proposed, known as appeasement, lead to World War II? Or would World War II have happened even without that? Is that a right or wrong question?
No.
No, you can argue both sides.
Good. So when we talk about doing your research and making your argument, it is your opinion, but you're not saying like, I think that cheerleading is a sport and that we ought to be recognized. It's not like personal like that. It's like, I'm gonna argue that World War II would have happened anyway based on this research evidence. Does that make sense? Sometimes I have students that aren't used to this type of research and they get a little too personal with their arguments, right? But I wanted to show you an example of an open-ended question that is purely research-based. All right, let's, can you jump back to this agenda for a second so that I can see if I'm missing anything that I really need to do? All right, we need to talk about your assignment and we need to start talking about what's gonna happen. So in Google Classroom, you have an assignment, it's a homework assignment. I posted it today, it's due next Friday. So not this coming Friday, but the following Friday, the 29th. I did that on purpose so that you could go home and get started on it. And then if you get confused or you have questions, when you come to class next week, you can get a little more help with some of that to turn it in for Friday. Okay, but we need to take a look at it. In your Google Classroom, somebody read this assignment to me. What does it say that you need to do? Who can read for me? This isn't easy.
I can.
Go ahead, Jordan, thanks.
Alright, thanks. You will choose
Two different.
two different topics for this assignment. These topics can come from your original 5 interest ideas, or they can be new. But Ms. A or Mr. K must approve them before you begin.
Okay, so that's all I need you to read for right now. Do you need to know anything else about this assignment yet? No, because you can't start until what?
You gotta look at
Until we approve your topics. So, take 5 minutes to call Mr. K and I over and ask us if we think what you're thinking of would be a good topic.
What if you have nothing to do?
Okay, then, all right, if you have no ideas whatsoever, go back to that theme book and look at some of the samples. See if it inspires.
So you're just gonna do, are
Absolutely,
you
that's why
only
they're
gonna focus
there.
on Nixon?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I would focus
Look at this, girl, and I thought you had a like homeschool idea.
Just
Okay,
to give
okay.
it context
All right.
on why.
Let me catch you up for a second.
Okay,
But
So this class is called a research
okay,
center.
and you,
The
so
whole
that sounds
point
like
of
you'd
this
focus more on the
class is to teach you how to do
conflict.
research,
yeah.
but obviously we don't
Aspect of
meet
it.
very often, so it's
Okay.
kind of hard to teach you.
Make
Basically,
sure
you're
you're
just
staying
gonna
within that
try
framework.
your best to do it, and I'm gonna help you along the way. So what we do is everyone in the class competes in something called National History Day.
No.
The History Day theme, they have a theme every year. This year's theme
Yeah, the
is
theme.
conflict and compromise. So
Theme.
you're gonna choose any topic at all that you are interested in. We're gonna tie it back to something kind of historical. So the only caveat is you couldn't do like Hurricane Irma. It's not historical, it's not biblical.
That is
You
so
need to do something
broad.
that
You gotta
happened 20
get more
years ago.
specific. Medieval Europe.
And you're gonna research
That
that.
was our thing.
And as a sophomore, you're gonna write about it. When you do
what
this class
era?
again as a junior, you'll have some other categories to choose from. But you're gonna try to research it,
I was
and you're gonna
So, I
ultimately
would
write a
focus
research paper about this
on
topic and
early
how,
Middle
what it has
Ages,
to do with conflict and
I
compromise.
would not
And in
go
February,
past, I would
actually
do,
March,
the
you're gonna
Crusades
take that
would be
paper to
what we focus
competition. And judges are gonna read all these papers, and they're
essentially
gonna interview you about your
crusades into
research.
Eastern Europe to
It's
eradicate
pretty cool.
paganism in Eastern Europe.
Does that kind of help a
because
little bit?
by
Like baby
the
steps a
fall
little
of
bit? Okay,
the middle,
good.
or the fall of Rome
Great.
and,
Alright, who has a topic they wanna run by? Alright.
there was, essentially the way. actually,
Alright, so the trick with you, Cameron, is that we've got to tie your interests into history. So, I know you're interested in sports, physical activities.
So Europe
So what
effectively
we've gotta come up with
looks
is,
like-
where is there a conflict? Remember we talked about concussions and football?
What?
That's a possibility, it's not the only one.
come on, why is it?
There have been lots of conflicts in the sporting world as far as like
This is Europe, right?
gender, you know,
All
can
the
a
colors
woman play
are
on a man's team?
effectively.
What about
That was
race?
just a reminder.
You know,
Frank's-
how long did it go before African